a case study presented by Jenny Wei Fan, Assistant Manager of Regulatory Affairs from H&H Group, on cross-industry learning from the pet food industry. Who's familiar with the pet food industry? Excellent. I expect a lot of questions from you. Jenny?
Morning, everyone, and I hope I'm really happy to see everyone again. And so I think as a regulatory professions, we all understand those regulations. There's a similarity and a difference across different sectors. So today, for my presentation, I'm gonna talk about share about my pet foods industry experience. So I hope this presentation can bring some new perspective and new opportunities for everyone's life. And in summary, so I'm gonna talk about 4 topics. So by the way, the pet food for me is really means the food for dog and pet. So firstly, we're gonna talk about the different type of pet foods, and then we will dive into the key attributes when we design pet foods. And then the third point is really the regulatory environment demand, and also the different type of trade association that's in our industry. And lastly, I will share some personal thoughts about how to build a successful regulatory affairs system. So a bit about myself. I already had an introduction, so I was thinking in the morning what I'm gonna say today. So I think I just wanna bring some additional information for my company. So our company is really a manufacturer, and I use co-manufacturer to produce a human supplement, infant formula, pet foods, and pet supplement. So the H&H is really stand for happy and health and happiness. So I really hope our companies really hope to bring happy and healthy life to everyone's families. So let's start my first topic. And so when we think about the human food, so basically we can define them by different raw material like cheese, vegetable, or the dairy product or meat product. But when we think about pet food, definitely we can also define them by raw material. But also the one kind of unique point is we can define the entire pet foods by nutrition. So basically, we can just separate 2 groups in this industry. So the first one is complete pet foods. So basically, this type of food can provide all the required nutrition in a sufficient and balanced amount in order to support our pets, the daily health and energy needs. And so those typical complete pet foods can be the one at the corner, like the kibbles, also the one on the top as the can product. And the other type of pet foods is complementary pet food. So basically, those products that don't contain all required nutrition or do not have a sufficient and a balanced amount in order to support our pet's daily need. So typically, they are kind of treats or nutritional supplement. So when we think about how to design our product, so similar as our human foods, there is a key attribute we need to really consider it. And so for this industry, so nutrition is one of our top consideration. Especially when we design our complete pet foods. So we really need to monitor the minimum and maximum nutrients values such as amino acid, fatty acids, vitamin and minerals based on some industry guidance in terms of different life stage of our pets. And for food nutrition, for the food safety also is very common factors across the human food and pet food industry. But in particularly for pet foods, we really need to consider the mycotoxin levels, especially for the dry kibbles, if the kibbles contain like high amounts of cereals, usually like 20 to 30% cereals in a typical dry kibbles type of pet foods. And so as yesterday we talk about salmonellas, talk about listerias, but so in the pet food industry, salmonella is our key considerations because usually our dry kibble is produced in a very dry environment. And the third one is a functional claim. And so I think we do have a lot of discussions about claims. And so functional claim is very, very critical for our industry. And so we make not only functional claim, but also nutritional claim, content claim. So I really just want to share some my personal learnings. As a regulator, you really wanted to ask some questions to marketing. What does the claim really means? So sometimes for example, they want to say, I want to make a natural claim, but you ask them what is natural means. Typically they don't tell you the definitions of the natural from the regulation. They talk about something else. So you really wanted to proactively work with marketing, give some directions, especially at the ideation stage. So then basically we work with them at the same journeys when we do the innovations. And next one is we will talk about the palatability. So this word, when we translate to human food, is a sensory evaluation. So palatability is very important because we want to make sure our pets eat enough amount. Because when we think about the complete pet foods, the pet is really rely on those nutrients to have their life. So if the products not taste good and they won't eat enough, then they will have nutrition deficiency issues. So this can be a very severe food safety concerns. And the last one is digestibility. So basically, we wanted to know how much the food's nutritional values can be absorbed by our pet. So in particularly, we use a lot of animal byproduct and different cereals and also the different type of mineral and vitamins. They have different digestibility levels. And so especially when we innovate a complete new pet food, we want to make sure the digestibility is above 80%. So let's look at the regulatory requirements and the trade association. So I would think about as a similarity of the regulations in the pet food industry. We also have requirements such as on the raw material, additives, labeling, undesirable substance, GMP related, and then also nutrition related. So there's a similar but also difference. So when we talk about raw material and additives, so typically, in generally speaking, and these two kind of regions, we all have kind of a positive list. So which means we can only use the nutritions that from those positive lists. So like for example, for US AFCO, they have Chapter 6, so they list a lot of feed raw materials that can be used in pet foods. But also they could have some exceptions. So for example, if the raw material is considered as a grass or considered as a very, very common food, so they may not in those positive list, but it's still okay to use in the in your pet food. And same as the food industry, so the additives also need to be approved by the government before we can add it into our product. And those additives, typically there is a maximum limit in the regulation. And so for the labelings, so same as the human foods, we do have labeling requirements. But some of the countries, the labeling requirements is under feed. So usually the pet food is under the feed industry. So for example, as EU, so we will follow the EU feed labeling requirements to label our pet product. And but for US AFCO, they do have a modeling regulations for the pet foods and specialty pet food. So the industry can follows. And the third one is undesirable substance. So I think undesirable substance is kind of more intense in this industry. So we really need to consider those mycotoxin, heavy metals, pesticides, these like kind of requirements. So like in EU, they have kind of a comprehensive list to talk about what are the maximum values that we need to compliance based on, maybe that apply to the dog and cat, or some values is only applied to cat. But for US, so FDA does have some guidance in terms of this, but it's more really on industry to work on their own risk assessment to determine the critical control points and the preventative controls. So in terms of the quality management system as a GMP, so both regions, they require the company to build kind of a hazard-based, HARP-C-based food safety management system to mitigate those hazards. And for nutrition, so as I talked about at the beginning, for the complete pet food, so we do have a nutritional requirements. So typically in the nutrition requirements in total is about 40 different nutrients that when we design the complete pet food, we need to make sure those nutrients in the minimum or maximum values. And but when you make complementary pet foods, it really depends on the type of product. So if you produce like supplements, but you cannot add it too much, those nutrition, especially like selenium, they have very low maximum values. You also need to watch out that point. And also you may want to give consumer guidance how to feed your pet. And lastly is the claim. So the claim is really dynamic in our industry. So like FADF, they do, FADF is industry trade association I will talk about later. So they do have some guidance for industry to guide industry to make different type of claims. And so these slides, I just wanted to give everyone some ideas how the different pet food label is. So we can start from the common name. So typically we need to declare the common names on the front panels. So either you will see it's a complete, or it's a treat, or it's a supplement, or you can figure it out based on the additional statements at the back panels. And in this industry, we don't have a standardized of identity that is in the regulation. Like we don't standardize different type of foods, but we do standardize the different type of raw materials. So we do have raw material definitions in those two regulations that we showed in the table in the previous slides. And so we need to make sure our declared name on the ingredient list meets those definitions requirements. Functional claim, so the functional claim that we always make in this product, for example, for housebone development, support the cat natural defense system, or help reduce tartar buildup, and so those are typical claims, but I don't think you will see this in a conventional food product. So guarantee analysis, so we used to talk about this as a nutritional fat panels, but in the pet business, so we declare and as it is, so we talk about the crude fibers, crude fat, and crude protein, and ash and moisture. So those are the mandatory declaration based on the AFCO's requirements. But recently, last year, AFCO does update. There's a new version of pet food regulation. So they did a lot of modification on the guarantee analysis. It's more looks like nutritional fat panels, but the industry haven't started to adopt the new requirements. So that's why on the market, when you buy the pet food at this time, you still see this type of guarantee analysis. And the last one is a special point for our industry is feed instruction. So our pet parents that need to know how much they need to give to their pet. So we don't want to feed our pet got obesity issues, and we want our pet healthy and happy. So we do provide feeding guide based on the calorie levels and from the foods and the pet need to guide our parents on the feeding areas. And then let's dive into the trade association. So I think a trade association is crucial for any of the regulatory fields. And so in our industry, so I want to talk about the first one is AFCO. So this trade association is US. So this is a very special trade association, but because all the members are from the government, either from the state agriculture departments, or they are from the federal, like FDA, so they are the members of the association. So they develop the nutritional guidance, labeling guidance, ingredients definitions, and laboratory guidance. So each of the states, they will adopt those guidance into as their individual state regulations. And second trade association is FADF. So this one is from EU. This is truly an industry trade association. So the members from the FADF is really from the different countries trade association from the EU, and also there is a pet food company. They are the part of FADF. So FADF, they do also develop self-regulate industry guidance, so the GMP related and labeling related and the nutritional guidance for cat and dog. So let's talk a little bit more specifically for our countries, how does Canada regulate pet food? So when we talk about these topics, we want to basically split into different scenarios. So if the manufacturer is only use domestic raw material and only sell within Canada, so basically there is no mandatory requirements, and for this industry, so you really just need to follow some industry practice like AFCO's guidance and FISMA's 21 CFR 507 to build your quality management system. And so we do have a pet food association within Canada, so they develop the guidance for labeling, but this guidance really just in line with ethical requirements. But in another situation, if the manufacturer deal with import and export, then they also need to work with CFA, because CFA, they do regulate the import and export activities. So those manufacturers need to register with CFA, and so CFA will come to do the on-site audit, and so that they will be able to issue the health certificate in order to do you can export your product. And also you need to think about those export countries' regulatory requirements, and the product need to meet the requirements. And so for the US, so US have different pictures compared with Canada. So there's the kind of 3 different type of government bodies regulate this industry. So FDA, Agriculture Department from individual states, and the USDA who manage the import and exports. So this table, we already see this in the previous slides, but in here, I just want to highlight 2 points. So firstly, we do need to register our product. So our product, so if you sell the product into individual states, then you need to register with individual states. And for the factory registration, so as a manufacturer, you do need to have a FDA registration for the states. So if your name is on the labels, then you should be registered with the individual state. So basically, the label guarantor need to register the product, but also register their kind of company or legal entities with the states as well. So there's a very complicated registration process. So US have in total 50 states, 48 states need a registration, but they all have different requirements, timelines, and cost. So it's quite a big challenge to manage this type of registration. So this is basically my last topic to talk about the regulatory affairs system. So I already shared some of my insights yesterday. So I think in here, just wanna share this circles to everyone. I think everyone we are here is really to ensure our regulatory compliance, and we have our clear role and responsibility in our business. But I think the most important role is, like the company asked to create this role for us, is really we need to support our business growth. So, so to think about in these ways, and also based on our daily works, I would really divide the regulatory affairs into kind of 3 different processes. So we should basically start with regulatory intelligence. So it basically means we monitor the policy and the regulation development, and we need to really actively join the trade association, maybe do some stakeholder analysis, to then this will basically help us to develop those partnerships and advocacy strategies so that we can achieve the external engagement. And the second process is really regulatory compliance. I think that is the most part of our daily works, like we review the labels, raw material process, interpret them in an easy, understandable way with our business. So usually in here, there's tons of activities, and I encourage everyone to really map up your process and also to use some indicators to track the process performance. The last piece is really the regulatory change. And so I think regulations really constantly change. And so we need to think about how to manage the change. And as I talked about yesterday, so we really need to separate the technical change and the people change. So for the people change, I really think the communication is really, really crucial. And we really want to build the awareness and desire. So it's not only tell them, here is the change, what it is. It's really want us to engage the people to really tell them what is really any benefits to the industry or to our company if after we implement the change. Then in this way we can kind of create a collaboration and engagement environment. So we will be able to implement change more smoothly. And also sometimes the difficulty is about really the ability. So people don't understand how to do, so help provide enough trainings, coachings, and support different tools is also really engaging for people to adopt the change. And since as I talk about these 3 big chunks, is considered as a 3 big process. So I really think we should consider to leverage our quality management elements to design those process, monitor the process performance, and if there's a deviations, we really need to think about CAPAs or do a proper root cause analysis to dive into the continuous improvement. And the outer circles is really the enablers. And so I think communication, risk management, and knowledge management is really embedded our daily works. And so those key enablers is really help us to sustain our regulatory compliance system. So the last thought, and so this share to everyone to think about. And so I really think the pet foods is really foster a lifelong bonding between us with the pet. So this industry is really deserve to be nurtured with passion and care. Okay, thank you everyone.
Do we have any questions? All right. Thank you. Right there at the back.
Hi, thank you for that presentation. I know we talked a lot about the regulations in the US and the EU. Canada, I guess, is lacking on that, it seems. So as a pet owner, how should I go about making sure my pets are getting fed the proper food here?
I think it's really when government develop regulations really based on the risk. But I really think our Canada's pet food is not even there's no regulation, but our industries really have a great industry common practice to make sure we do supply the health and quality product to our consumers. So as I mentioned, those pet food like in Canada, they follow the industry common practice. So basically is the same, they're similar as a US pet food. And I will say lots of our pet food in our markets are imports from US. So I would think you should not have concerns about safety and quality of your product. And we really have a great manufacturer like Mars, Rural Canins, and Nestle. They provide a brilliant product.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.